We're going to stay with the big hooks actually. You see this one tied, again, larger sizes. I would say you could tie it down to a size 4 comfortably, but it starts to look kind of awkward, and it's way too much work, frankly, for smaller sizes than that. So yeah, we'll stick with that size 2 hook. Pop that guy in there. And for the thread, just go, actually no, we'll stick with this stuff. That'll work well. Started on there. For eyes, we'll go with that set of dumbbells as well. Again, and this one I've seen tied both ways, bead chain, dumbbells. Again, it's more of a bonefish fly, I'd say, than a permit one, so you're definitely going to want to have different weights. I've caught bonefish in channels, 10 feet deep, blind casting where we want, the heaviest fly in the box, but more often than not, again, you're talking about shallower water situations, this would be on the very heavy side of what I would fish. Again, this is a small size dumbbell. I would not be going any larger than this. Great at that tonight. The other thing about weight in regards to fly and bulkiness, being how easy it is to cast, is my go-to rod for bonefish. Unless you're in a place where you had just monstrous average size fish, I prefer to fish a 7 weight over anything else. Just because for one, it's more fun. If you're getting into smaller sized fish, it just adds that level of enjoyment to it. But even more so for the presentation. A 7 weight line is a lot lighter than an 8, or some guys will go up to a 9 weight line, and so in that skinny water it's going to land a lot more delicately, less chance spooking those fish, and it also allows you to fish those lighter tippets getting down to a 10 pound size because you have that shock absorption built into the rod. But because of that, you are kind of capped on the practical weight and bulkiness of a fly that you can cast comfortably. Weight to a lesser extent, but definitely bulkiness. So that's maybe another reason why you would prefer to fish that lighter fly when possible, as long as practical. So this set, I really don't have anything to tie in front of the eyes here, so I'm going to tie them butting pretty well right up against the eye of the hook. And for the tail of this guy, it's a little more complex. There's a bunch of materials that they throw into this one. To start off with, I'm going to go with those same antennae that I did on the Avalon, so just a single strand of black crystal flash. Again, tied in pretty long. Have that around there. Make sure we got those ends are even. And then I'll tie in addition to that, a little bit of pearl flash. This is a little bit more of an attractor fly, something that, again, I haven't fished personally, so I can't guarantee this, but I would suspect is going to be something a little more productive for your lesser fish, lesser pressured fisheries. Lots of attention-grabbing materials in there. This is about 5 strands of just pearl. This is a crinkle flash, but a Flashabou or a crystal flash, anything like that will work. I'm going to cut this, I'm just going to eyeball it about 1 times the hook gap, I would say, is a decent measurement here, just for a little flash at the back end. And then I'm also going to tie in, once again, just a little bit of that egg yarn for an egg sac here. Tying this on what will become the bottom of the shank. I'm going to cut this about the same length as that pearl flash, maybe a hair shorter. Then I'm going to invert this hook. Now I'm tying on top of the fly. Going to tie in a set of legs going out the back. For that, I'll use, again, just these tan barred legs. this I do want sort of side and side, so roughly halfway here. I'm going to leave these things long, but not the entire length. So I will cut them, and as such I'm not too worried about matching up the lengths exactly off the hop. Recognize there will be some waste. So legs long out the back here. Over top of that, I'm going to take the sort of the main feature of this fly, some Coyote, and I'm going to cut a little clump off the side here. And this stuff has a ton of underfur, so I'll just rip that out. You can save it for dubbing if you want. If anyone wants to take my pile of underfur from up here, take it home and go for it. I'm really focused on these guard hairs here, which have a nice sort of modeling, some nice dark tips to them, and again aren't going to absorb a ton of water and become bulky. You know, if you use a ton of underfur, what you're going to find is that that underfur, because it's so soft, is going to absorb a lot of water, and again, just be clunkier and harder for you to cast, and also slow the descent of the fly because you're dealing with, you know, something that has, you know, more fibers, more surface area, it clings to more water. It's going to slow it down. So if this is going to be a deep water fly, as the heavy eyes would indicate this one is, I want to thin it out a little bit. Make it heavy but thin. That's about right. I'm tying this just a little longer than the egg sac there. I just want to veil that a little bit. And then I'm going to cut this to be about the length of the shank and just take some loose wraps over top of that bundle. Hold it down. I don't cut it close because I want to, again, just maintain a nice even bed. Twist it on me a little bit. I have to go back to those eyes afterwards. It's fine. Alright, so we got that tied in. I'll do as well, actually. I think it's a little heavy. I think the original had 4 legs itself. It had 2 natural and 2 hot ones. I think it's looking a little heavy to do that on this size, so I'm just going to skip that, but of course add it in if you want. Gonna do 2 things. Add in, jumping back and forth here. Gonna tie in some mono eyes here. Nope. That's what they look like. These are the pre-made ones. I'll be honest, they aren't cheap for what they are. Little pieces of mono that have been melted and have some black epoxy on the ends. You can make these things pretty easily. I'm just too lazy to do it. And showing you a cleaner option. Frankly, it's hard to get them just perfect and round, so if you buy them, you know, you can get a cleaner final product, but if you want to make them yourself, it's pretty straightforward. How I like to do it is, instead of just relying on melting the mono so it curls back and balls up on itself, because that's sort of an imperfect science in getting a consistent product, I'll do that so I have a little bit of a curled end, something for the glue to purchase to. But then I will put a little bit of, I find the easiest thing to use is UV resin, just because I can set it quickly, get a nice ball, and freeze it where I want it. They make black colored UV resins now, which I think are just the easiest way to go to make these things. You can use epoxy if you want, it works fine too. Or, at the very least, melt that back, but when you melt the mono, it won't be this black. So take a Sharpie to the end of it and just touch up black, and that's something at least. But you won't get them this big and round if you do it that way. I like to tie them in just one at a time. I find it a little easier than trying to do both at once. You can do it either way if you want, though. Take it, and you'll usually notice that there's a little bit of a curve to it naturally. It's just the mono, you know, coming off a spool. Whoever made these things, there's a little bit of a curve. I like to have them curve outwards from the fly, just so they don't get buried in the tail material. So I'll find that curve. I'll tie this in so it extends back about as far as that egg sac again. One side. And it may twist on me when I first tie it in. Fine, I can roll it and adjust it as need be. And then what you can do is, well, you can pull it off the side and introduce a new bend to that mono, which will set it apart from the rest of the materials as well. So do that. You can see how it comes up a little bit from the rest of the fly. Then the other side, I'll just measure to be the same length. There. Off the side a little bit here. Just this mono started to roll on me, so I'll pull it in line with the rest of the fly. Again, just trying to keep it consistently sized underbody to this fly so that everything I lay on top is going to lay down smoothly. Cut the ends off close there, and now we have the entire back end of the fly done. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thread, double it over to create a dubbing loop. Not too large, you know, what do you call it again, 4 inches. I'm going to take my thread, overlap it all the way back to the tail. And now, I think the key to a good dubbing loop is to make sure that the ends that attach to the body of the fly are tied in immediately next to each other, so that when you twist it up, they are bound as tightly together as possible. The best way to do this is to take your bobbin and go around the base of that loop a couple times, and then come up and tie it down. So now those are tying precisely the same point instead of being slightly open, where your first wraps may not grip that material tightly enough. For the body, I'm going to leave that for a second. I'm going to grab a couple packs of, this is Wing and Flash. If you've worked with angel hair before, it's very, very similar to that. It's just a very light mylar, very, very thinly cut. You can use different dubbings for this too. What I'm going to do, I've got sort of a shrimp pink here, and I've got a pearl. I'm going to take just a wisp of either here. Doesn't take much. It's a pretty long fiber too. Very, very light amount. I'm going to take them, very roughly blend them in my hands. And then literally just taking a couple strands off the top here, dub them onto my thread. I want to create a very thin dubbing base here. Stuff dubs surprisingly well. It doesn't pick out well because it's such a long fiber that the entire fiber gets matted and trapped down there, so you can't pick this stuff out really unless you were to chop it up to create a shorter length. But as far as how it dubs on, it's quite easy to control. Yeah, it makes for a nice effect. So I'm just laying that over. Just want light sparkle to the body there. Take these couple other fibers I have. Cover up the entire body. And now, plus that thread off the side for a second, grab some dubbing wax and my dubbing twister. This twister's from a brand called OPST, and I will say it's not cheap for what it is, but I find it way easier to use than a fancier dubbing twister. The thing I look for in a good dubbing twister is just something really heavy that's going to apply good firm tension to my thread. I don't need it to do all kinds of tricks for me, I just need it to keep things tight. So I like this one. We're going to go back to our coyote hair here and take a pretty healthy sized clump. Again, remembering how quickly this stuff thins down once we take out that underfur. So take out a nice big clump here, and again just pull out the underfur. Not bother combing this stuff. I don't need it to be perfect, but I do want the bulk of that underfur removed. You could comb it if you wanted. And then with the tips held tight, you can't really stack this stuff, but even if you could, there's no real benefit to stacking it. I just slide it inside my loop. I want to extend the tip ends past the side, the edge of that loop, now about an inch or so, not far. And then you can cut this stuff before putting in. I find if you just sort of settle your finger on the backside so it doesn't twist, you can trim it to the length that you want after the fact without jostling the fibers around too badly. And now I'm going to move these fibers to spread them out anyways. Just spreading these fibers out. I want to create a fairly sparse spreading of these fibers just to veil this body. I'm not looking to completely cover that dubbing that I lay down. So just a sparse amount. So let's have them spread out. I'll pinch my loop at the bottom where it meets the dubbing twister. Twist up good and tight until I can't stop the loop from twisting any further. And then I'm going to release and pull back on my dubbing twister at the same time. that will get most of those fibers locked in. You'll notice that some fibers, you can see that, are matted around the thread there. So either with my scissors or with my bodkin, I'll just try and tease those out of the loop, keep them from getting matted down like that. Because that does two things. Obviously, it defeats the entire purpose of this dubbing loop, which is to have these fibers visible. But the other thing is that it creates a much thicker dubbing rope, which becomes much bulkier on the body. In this case, we really don't want the core of this dubbing loop to be visible. Now, sometimes you're just doing this, say, for a collar, and you don't really care about that aspect of it. But in this case, because it's so translucent, this body, you will see everything below. So just in the interest of cleanliness. That even a little further if we want, just to really make sure these fibers aren't going to escape on us. Again, just quickly go over it, make sure that they're not moving around. What's that? Alright, so I'm pretty happy with how these things are good and free now. Before wrapping this, I'm going to do, if you've ever folded a hackle before, that's basically what I'm going to do. So wet my fingers slightly and just get a good firm grasp around the thread and pull all the fibers to one side. Wiggle my fingers slightly just to sort of crease the whole bundle. Now you'll see they're just staying on the one side of this thread. So when I wrap these things down, I'm not, again, trapping any fibers underneath themselves. They're all going to be free and standing upright. And you'll get a much cleaner looking and easier flowing fly. The process, if you haven't done it with a hackle before, is virtually identical to that. It's just that you can't quite be as rough because you will break the hackle stem. That's the only trick there. But yeah, with this stuff, it's pretty straightforward. As I'm wrapping, you'll see I'm just pulling the fibers back to, again, avoid trapping them underneath themselves. And I'm just making open, spiraling wraps through the body. Again, I want you to be able to see through the coyote fur here, right to the core of this fly. Just veiling it lightly, and I'll go back, keep a grip on this thing, because if I let go, you'll see it starts untwisting pretty quickly, and I'm going to lose my grip on my fibers. So I keep a grip on my twister, not too tight, just to make sure it doesn't untwist, and then I start wrapping over it, just like any other material. So, and then bring my thread forward, whip finish. Again, usually this fly has a weed guard. I don't care for them, so I don't bother. Feel free if you want. If you haven't tied a weed guard before, there's a bunch of ways to do it. The best way I would say if you're going to is to take a stiff piece of mono, 20 to 30 pounds, double it over, pull it upwards on the same size as your hook point, and wrap your thread in front of it and sort of around the sides to stand the two strands upwards, and that should, in theory, deflect weeds off. It doesn't work all that well, to be honest, but it's something. At this point, if you want, you can again take some Velcro and just quickly go over the body. This may pick out a couple strands of flash into the body, which again gives it just a nice kind of shimmer, but it doesn't do much of that. What it really does is the roughing up of this fly, and you can be rough with the Velcro on this stuff. The hair is not fragile at all. It'll get those coyote fibers to lay back for you in a nice streamlined way. These legs, I'm just going to trim down, again, about half the length of my antennae here, evenly. And that is your coyote spotting shrimp. I think most people have seen it. That's all I got. Any more questions about not necessarily flies, but